By midnight, 2 secrets would detonate my sister's wedding. The woman they'd uninvited owned the building they were standing in, and she was the only person in the room who could keep the groom breathing. At 8:17 a.m. on a Tuesday, my phone lit up while I was signing for 2 pallets of medical ice and dry ice behind our distribution bay in Topeka. The summer air smelled like iron and rain. A freight driver scrawled his name on the clipboard, then nodded toward my ringing phone. "Melissa Carter?" a careful voice asked when I answered. "This is Valerie from Prairie Charm Weddings, calling about your sister's event." My pen froze over the dotted line. "Go ahead." "There's been a change from the Harper-Clark family." She inhaled like the next sentence hurt. "You've been removed from the guest list for the ceremony and reception." The request said, and I'm quoting, "to avoid tension." Also, the family intends to retain all deposits already paid toward the venue and vendors. The driver wheeled his pallet jack away, leaving me alone with the hum of the walk-in coolers and the quiet sting of the words. I braced my hip against the steel door, watching the condensation beat and run. "I understand," I said. "I really am sorry," Valerie added, soft and Midwestern. "I realize this is a family matter." "You're talking about Emily's wedding," I said. "At Riverfront Pavilion in Kansas City. 230 guests." "That's right," she said, surprised that I knew. "Your sister's fiancé booked through us, venue, Bluestem table for catering, sunflower crust for bakery, Heartland tents and power, Prairie coach for transportation, the whole package." "Good," I said. "Then please cancel everything. Venue, catering, bakery, rentals, shuttle buses, right down to the last bamboo stake for their string lights. And please refund any guest deposits for lodging blocks." Silence poured through the line like August heat. "I'm sorry? You want to cancel?" "Ms. Carter, you're not the client of record." "Open your CRM, Valerie," I said. "Look at the ownership column. Prairie Charm Weddings rolls up to Mid-Spoke Holdings. Riverfront Pavilion is a subsidiary of Mid-Spoke Properties. Bluestem Table is managed under Mid-Spoke Food Services. Sunflower Crust, Heartland Tents and Power, Prairie Coach, different operators, one parent." "Same parent." Her keyboard tapped, then stopped. A long, careful pause. "Ms. Carter, are you saying?" "I'm saying I'm the founder and CEO of Mid-Spoke Group," I replied. "If the family doesn't want me at the party, my companies don't need to work the party. Please process the cancellations and initiate refunds where applicable." Another inhale. "Ma'am, the wedding is in 3 weeks. Quality alternatives are almost impossible on this timeline. This will, well, it will blow the whole thing up. That is no longer my problem." I ended the call and set the clipboard down. A gull wheeled over the river to the east, white against storm blue. Somewhere in Kansas City, my older sister, Emily with the gold resume, perfect posture, and perfect opinions, was walking into a day she thought she controlled. Somewhere, our parents were nodding along, pretending ethics and appearances were the same thing. Somewhere, the girl who never made anything of herself had just kicked the legs out from under their perfect table. My phone buzzed before I made it back inside. "Mom, we need to talk about your recent attitude. For everyone's sake, please don't come Saturday. We've already spent the money you sent, I thumbed out a reply, then deleted it. Then another, set it on fire, too. Finally I wrote, message received. Have a beautiful day, What Mom didn't know, 8 years earlier, the butt of a family joke, had quietly built a supply and care network across the Middle States. I'd started as a certified nursing assistant, nights at a rehab clinic off Wanamaker Road, the kind of job people mock with "so you wipe old people's butts." I learned 4 checks, de-escalation, how to listen when a person's pride wouldn't let them ask for water. The work rewired my brain. People didn't need pity. They needed time to be treated like people, plus the right supplies showing up on time. I began saving every dollar. Then I leased a tiny warehouse. Then a second one, closer to Wichita. I drove a rickety box truck between urgent care centers and rural hospitals, stocking gloves, sterile packs, portable oxygen tanks. When tornado season knocked power out for counties at a time, I bought generators and kept clinics cold and lit. When supply chains snarled, I learned to break the jam, buy direct from overlooked producers, keep emergency stock, show up when bigger names didn't. Every margin I made got recycled into the next gap I found. By year 5, Midspoke wasn't just moving boxes, it was holding the Midwest together with stubborn logistics, medical, food, power, transport. People think success is an announcement. In the Middle States, it's a truck that arrives when the road is mud. My sister never asked about the warehouses, or the night school I finished, or the way the same nurses who trained me were now my partners. Emily was climbing in a world where your worth is measured by a door with your name on it and whether a maitre d' knows it. She called what I did nice, then changed the subject to who was arguing what case. I loved her anyway. I loved her enough to wire a deposit when Mom called crying 6 months back, begging for help to do it right. I didn't put my name on the transfer. I didn't expect a place of honor. But I didn't expect a deletion either. A second buzz, Dad. Asterisk, there's a misunderstanding. Call me, asterisk. The river wind blew through the bay, cool as a threat. I texted back, asterisk, no misunderstanding. You have my number, asterisk. 10 minutes later, my foreman stuck his head out the door. Missy? Phone for you, Valerie again. I took it inside, past the neat shelves of labeled bins and the chalkboard with tomorrow's routes chalked in white. Yes? 2 things, Valerie said, voice tighter now. Your mother called in tears. She's saying there are 230 people invited, with flights and blocks and everything. Also, this is internal. When I flagged the cancellations, our property managers called me. They, confirmed your authority. Any way we can redirect them to Grand Elm Hall? I asked. Smaller. Lunch menu only. House flowers. Staff photographer. Capacity 80. Prepay. 200,000 flat. That's 4 times the original per head, she breathed. And a third the space. That's the offer. Ms. Carter, may I ask why? Because I want my sister to get married, I said. Just not on a scaffold built from the idea that I don't belong. Outside, thunder rolled down the river. Inside, between the freezers and the order desk, I counted to 10 the way they teach you in de-escalation. Somewhere ahead, the lights would go out, and someone would stop breathing, and secrets would become facts. For now, we were still pretending. Make the calls, I told Valerie. I'll handle the fallout. Emily Carter had always been the family's sunbeam. Teachers praised her essays, debate judges marveled at her crisp logic, neighbors shook their heads in admiration when she left for the University of Chicago on a scholarship. When she came home to Topeka for holidays, she carried herself like someone already halfway out of the plains, her future a shining skyline far away. By 28, she was an associate at a corporate law firm in Kansas City, billing hours that would make most Midwesterners dizzy. She bought a condo with tall windows, joined a wine club, and posted filtered photos from firm retreats in Denver and Austin. To our parents, she was the Carter who had made it. At every Thanksgiving, the conversation drifted toward Emily's casework and Emily's promotions while my own updates, warehouses leased, supply contracts won, fleets expanded, landed with polite nods and quick subject changes. When Emily got engaged to Andrew Clark, the son of a prominent regional banker, the family reacted as if the Midwest had sprouted royalty. Mom cried into the phone for an hour about, at last, stability. Dad beamed over steaks at their country club, introducing Andrew as if he were already part of the lineage. The Carters and the Clarks, respectable, prosperous, unimpeachable. I had shaken Andrew's hand twice before the deletion. He was tall, courteous, hair parted like the cover of a college brochure. He asked what I did, and when I said logistics, he smiled the way men smile at the word secretary. Now, 3 weeks before vows, they thought they had erased the inconvenient sister. And in some ways they had always tried. Emily was the daughter our parents bragged about at Rotary lunches, the one whose resume polished their own fading ambitions. I was the cautionary tale, the girl who dropped out of nursing school to drive a beat-up box truck at night, the one whose paycheck smelled like bleach and diesel. What no one understood was that both roads, hers of prestige, mine of grit, led to power. Hers was visible, burnished in mahogany offices. Mine was hidden, moving silently across interstates and county lines, feeding clinics and keeping lights on. And mine had one advantage hers did not, leverage. That evening, Dad finally called. "Melissa, listen," he began, voice already defensive. "We've had some confusion. You weren't exactly uninvited. We just thought, for appearances, maybe sit this one out. You know how people talk." "Confusion," I repeated. "Dad, you filed a request to remove me." "That's not confusion. You've always been so sensitive," he sighed. "We've spent thousands already. We can't undo arrangements." "You don't have arrangements anymore," I said. "I canceled them." He went silent, as if a fuse had blown in his brain. "You what?" "Every vendor. Every venue. All of them operate under Midspoke Group. Which I own. Which you never asked about." "Melissa, that's impossible. You move boxes." "I own the boxes, Dad. And the trucks, and the warehouses, and the companies your future in-laws are depending on." On the other end, muffled voices, Mom, perhaps Emily. Then his voice, smaller, "Why didn't you tell us?" "I did," I said. "For years. You didn't listen." By Thursday the storm had reached Emily. She called, her voice tight as violin strings. "What is this stunt?" "Valerie says you shut down the whole operation. 230 people have plane tickets." "This isn't a stunt," I told her. "It's math. You cut me out while cashing my hell. You don't get both." "God, Melissa, you always make things difficult. Do you know what people are saying already?" "They'll say more soon," I said, and for the first time I heard her hesitate. "Why?" she whispered. "Why would you do this to me?" "Because I wanted to be there for you," I said simply. "And you decided I wasn't worth the seat." Later that night, my phone buzzed again, an unknown number. Andrew Clark. His tone was colder than Emily's. If you think you can strong-arm my family with threats, you're mistaken. We have other options. You have 3 weeks, I reminded him. Find another venue with capacity for 200, catering, rentals, and transport during peak season. In Kansas City. Good luck. You'll regret this. Maybe, I said. But tonight, you'll start realizing who you uninvited. When the call ended, I looked out at the warehouse yard where my truck slept nose to tail, white boxes under mercury lamps. Emily had her gold path. I had my gravel one. And gravel, under enough weight, grinds everything smooth. Friday morning, my inbox detonated. Messages from vendors, property managers, even the regional paper. Someone had leaked that the Harper Clark wedding was in crisis. Reporters wanted quotes. Caterers wanted reassurance. My legal team flagged 2 frantic letters from Andrew's father, heavy with threats of litigation. I smiled without humor. He had no idea half the judges on his contact list owed favors to my company for propping up their districts during last year's supply drought. Leverage is invisible until it isn't. That week, it was everywhere. My warehouses were stacked with storm stockpiles, generators, freeze packs, ready to ship kits for rural hospitals. The moment a phone line hummed, I knew I could either release or withhold. That wasn't cruelty, it was business. But business was personal now. Mom came in person. She showed up at my Topeka office unannounced, a pastel cardigan draped around her shoulders like armor. The receptionist looked terrified as she announced her. I waved her in. Melissa, honey, this has gone far enough. Her voice trembled, though whether from anger or shame I couldn't tell. Your sister's wedding is 3 weeks away. Families are flying in. What will people think if there's no event? I closed the ledger on my desk. They'll think the family that erased their own daughter got what they ordered. You know that's not what we meant. That's exactly what you meant. I stood, walked to the window overlooking the truck yard. You decided appearances mattered more than blood. She flinched. We never stopped loving you. Love doesn't scratch my name off a list, Mom. She sat heavily in the leather chair, eyes shining. Your father and I, we thought we were protecting Emily. Andrew's family is proud. They value status. And you offered me as a sacrifice. Tears welled. We didn't know you'd become all this. She gestured weakly at the wall of maps, supply routes pinned in colored thread. If we had, you'd have bragged about me like you bragged about her. Silence. Only the hum of the air unit. Finally she whispered, Please, Melissa. Don't ruin your sister's big day. I turned back, steady. I'm not ruining anything. I'm giving her a choice. Smaller hall, stricter terms, acknowledgement that I belong. Or city hall. That's leverage. That night Emily texted, we need to talk. Just us, We met at a diner off I-70, chrome and neon humming against the dark. She slid into the booth opposite me, still in her suit from court, makeup cracked at the edges. For once, she didn't look invincible. Why are you doing this? She asked, voice frayed. If you wanted an invitation, you could have said so. You didn't need to scorch the earth. I stirred my coffee slowly. I didn't want pity. I wanted respect. There's a difference. You think destroying months of planning earns respect? You erased me first. She slammed her palm on the table hard enough that silverware rattled. Heads turned. She lowered her voice. You have no idea how much pressure I'm under. Andrew's family expects perfection. Dad expects perfection. This wedding is supposed to prove I've built a life that's worthy. And my presence makes it unworthy? Her face softened, the anger bleeding into something else. Shame, maybe. I thought you didn't care about these things. I don't. But I care about you. Enough to help, even when you didn't notice. Enough to refuse being erased. Emily looked down at her untouched soda, shoulders trembling. I was wrong, she whispered. I believed the version of you everyone repeated. The one who failed school, who settled for night shifts. I never asked what you were really building. Now you know. She nodded slowly. Andrew won't accept it. His parents definitely won't. Then you have to choose what matters more, I said. Their pride, or your sister. Saturday morning, Valerie called again. Update: the families are panicking. They're begging for any alternative. Should I hold Grand Elm Hall? Yes. But make the terms clear. Full prepayment by Monday. Formal apology delivered in writing. Invitation restored, not as courtesy, but as choice. And if they refuse? Then let them scramble. I won't lift a finger. I hung up and leaned back. 3 weeks to the wedding. The weight had shifted. For the first time in my life, Emily was the one asking what I would decide. And for the first time, I realized power wasn't about owning trucks or buildings, it was about whether, when the moment came, I could forgive enough to use them. Sunday dawned heavy with July heat. My phone was already buzzing before church bells rang in town. Reporters again, hungry for scandal. Vendors with nervous questions. And finally, Emily, short, clipped messages, * we need to fix this. Andrew is furious. Dad is calling it blackmail, *. Blackmail. The word stung, not because it was true but because it revealed how little they still understood. I wasn't demanding money, I was demanding dignity. But to a family that worshipped image, any challenge to their script felt like extortion. By noon, Dad convened a family meeting at their colonial-style house in Fairlawn. I arrived deliberately late, jeans and work boots still dusted from the warehouse. Emily sat stiffly on the sofa, Andrew beside her like a granite monument. Mom ran her hands near the fireplace. Dad paced. Melissa, he began, tone the same one he used when scolding us as kids, this circus ends today. We will not be held hostage. I folded my arms. Hostage? You crossed my name off your guest list while cashing my deposit. I'm not the jailer here. Andrew leaned forward, jaw tight. You're sabotaging something bigger than yourself. 2 families, hundreds of guests, this isn't about you. That's where you're wrong, I said evenly. It became about me the second you erased me. Actions have consequences. Emily flinched. Can we please not do this like enemies? Melissa, tell us what you want. Exactly. I laid it out clearly, prepay Grand Elm Hall by tomorrow. Written apology from both families acknowledging they misjudged me. Invitation restored sincerely, not begrudgingly. Those are the terms. Dad turned crimson. Absurd. You're drunk on power you barely understand. I met his eyes. I understand it perfectly. Power is finally being able to say no. Silence swelled. Mom whispered through tears, "Can't we just be a family?" "We could," I said gently, "if you treated me like one." The standoff lasted nearly an hour. Finally Emily broke, her voice raw. "We can't rebuild this wedding from nothing in 3 weeks. Andrew, Dad, we have no choice. Melissa owns every path out." Andrew shot her a look sharp enough to cut glass. But he said nothing. "Fine," Dad muttered. "Draft your damned terms." That evening I sat alone at the Topeka warehouse, drafting the contract myself. 3 pages, reservation of Grand Elm Hall, catering limitations, payment schedule, apology clauses. It was clinical, businesslike. But beneath the legalese my chest burned. I hadn't wanted it like this. I'd wanted inclusion, not leverage. Respect, not fear. When the courier came to pick up copies, thunder cracked across the prairie. A storm was rolling in, air thick and trembling. Fitting, I thought. Families fracture quietly for years, then one lightning strike reveals the fault line. Monday morning brought signatures. Reluctant, scrawled, but signatures nonetheless. Alongside them, a letter drafted in my parents' careful prose, *, "We misjudged you. We let appearances blind us to your worth. We invite you not as obligation, but as family, *. It wasn't poetic. But it was more than I'd ever had. Valerie confirmed the booking at Grand Elm Hall. Capacity, 80. Menu, pared down. Florals, house only. Guests would be trimmed by 2/3. The Harper Clark spectacle had been reduced to something smaller, humbler, and suddenly real. Emily called that night. Her voice was quiet, almost childlike. "Thank you for not destroying everything. I didn't save it for them," I admitted. "I saved it for you." On the other end, silence stretched, then broke with a sob. "I don't deserve you," she whispered. "Maybe not," I said softly. "But you still have me." As I hung up, I realized the balance had shifted again. For the first time, Emily wasn't my rival or judge. She was my sister, scared, flawed, human. And for the first time, I wondered whether the wedding's real redemption wouldn't be hers at all, but mine. Grand Elm Hall sat on the edge of Lawrence, a squat limestone building framed by cottonwoods and a river bend. It had never been designed for grandeur. At most, 80 guests could crowd its narrow aisles, the walls faint with decades of local weddings, church meetings, high school banquets. Yet when my operations team began dressing it, something transformed. House flowers glowed against whitewashed stone, the in-house photographer tested lenses in the afternoon light, and caterers assembled modest but careful plates of roast chicken, corn salad, and pie. Humble, yes. But flawless. Word spread quickly. The Harper Clark spectacle of 230 had collapsed into whispers of a scaled-down family affair. Friends of friends canceled flights. Emily slashed guest lists with trembling hands. Every cut felt like surrender. Andrew argued, his parents seethed, but logistics was iron law. You can't conjure a ballroom out of 3 weeks. The first real reconciliation came quietly. Emily appeared at my warehouse on a Wednesday evening, still in her office skirt but barefoot, heels in hand. She looked around at the shelves stacked with supplies, the hum of refrigeration units, the whiteboard marked with deliveries. For once, she seemed curious. "This is what you've built?" she asked. "Yes," I said simply. "Brick by brick." She walked between aisles of neatly packed cartons, oxygen tanks, sterile gloves, for kits. She touched the labels as if tracing a language she'd never learned. "I thought you just drove trucks." "I did," I said. "That's how it started." Her eyes glistened. "You kept all this hidden." "I kept telling you," I corrected. "You didn't hear me." We stood in silence until she finally whispered, "I'm sorry." 2 words, thin but sharp. The first crack in years of judgment. Days blurred. My staff moved like clockwork, handling the scaled-down wedding as if it were a state banquet. Valerie coordinated deliveries. I double-checked contingency plans. Thunderstorms threatened that weekend, and I had generators staged outside Grand Elm just in case. No detail would fail, not because I wanted to impress Andrew's family, but because I wanted Emily to see that love didn't mean absence of strength. The rehearsal dinner was the first time I stood in the same room with both families since the implosion. Andrew's parents watched me like I was a hostile negotiator. My own father avoided my eyes. Mom fluttered nervously. Emily, though, kept close to me, introducing me to guests she'd salvaged for the smaller list. "Melissa," she said loudly enough for a table of aunts to hear, "none of this would even exist without you." Her voice cracked just slightly on the word "you." The room shifted. Conversations stilled for a moment, glances darted. Respect, the thing I had chased and abandoned, settled on me not as applause, but as silence. That night, Emily knocked on my motel room door. She looked pale, mascara smudged. "I need to ask you something," she said. "Would you stand beside me tomorrow? As my maid of honor?" For a second I forgot to breathe. "What about your best friend Claire?" "She'll understand." "She told me tonight, your sister is the one who saved this." "She's right." "Melissa, I want you up there with me." I swallowed the lump in my throat. "Yes," I said. "Of course, yes." She hugged me, awkward and sudden, like we were kids again in a house that no longer existed. And for the first time in years, I hugged her back. The morning of the wedding, storm clouds bruised the horizon. I drove early to the hall, overseeing every final cable and flower. Guests arrived in trickles, fewer than planned but warmer, more real. Emily dressed in a back room, nerves visible even through layers of lace. I pinned her veil, our hands trembling together. She looked in the mirror, then at me. "I don't care what anyone thinks today," she whispered. "As long as you're here." The storm outside rumbled, lightning flickering. But inside the smallest hall, for the first time, I felt something steady, not leverage, not revenge, but belonging. Rain hammered the roof of Grand Elm Hall as guests settled into the pews. The thunder outside was relentless, but inside the limestone walls candles glowed, casting amber halos over the reduced crowd. 80 voices rose in murmurs, not the roar of 230, yet the intimacy felt electric. Emily stood at the altar, her veil trembling in the draft, and I beside her, maid of honor against every prediction our family had once made. The ceremony unfolded with simplicity. No string quartet imported from Chicago, no 12-tier cake shipped from St. Louis. Just vows spoken clearly, eyes shining, hands held tight. When Emily's voice caught on the phrase "for better or worse," she squeezed my hand, and I realized she wasn't just marrying Andrew. She was choosing, at last, to see me. The reception followed in the narrow hall, thunder of percussion outside. Plates of roast chicken and pie were passed. Laughter, tentative at first, grew bolder. For once, it wasn't about spectacle. It was about survival, about family learning to breathe together again. Halfway through, Emily tapped her glass for attention. "I wasn't supposed to give a speech," she began, voice carrying over the storm, "but plans changed. A lot changed. And tonight, I need to say this: everything you see here, everything holding this day together, is because of my sister." She turned to me. "Melissa, I spent years judging you, assuming you hadn't built anything worthy of notice. I was wrong. You built something stronger than prestige. You built a backbone for this whole region, and tonight, you gave me back my wedding when I didn't deserve it. Thank you for being here, and for never giving up on me, even when I gave up on you." Silence fell, heavy and raw. Then applause rose, not polite but thunderous, a roar that matched the storm. My father's eyes glistened. Mom pressed a napkin to her lips. Even Andrew looked chastened, as if realizing the ground beneath his assumptions had washed away. When it was my turn, I stood slowly. "When Emily and I were kids," I said, "she was always the star. And I was proud of her. Somewhere along the way, I became the shadow. Maybe I let myself believe that's all I could be. But shadows have their own work, they prove the light is real. Success isn't about who shines the brightest. It's about building something that lasts, and sharing it with the people you love, even when they don't see you clearly." I raised my glass. "To Emily and Andrew. May you build something stronger than appearances. May you weather every storm together. And may you never forget that family is not about perfection, it's about forgiveness." Glasses clinked, thunder cracked, and for the first time in years, I felt not outside the circle but inside it. Later, on the terrace, Dad approached me. Rain misted in the lamplight. He cleared his throat. "Melissa, I don't know how to undo the years we dismissed you. But tonight, I want you to know, I'm proud. Not just of what you built. Of who you are." I studied his face, weathered and humbled. "Thank you," I said. "That's all I ever wanted." Behind us, music played, modest and joyful. Emily danced, her laughter rising above the storm. For once, she wasn't the golden child and I wasn't the forgotten one. We were simply sisters, standing in the same light. As I left that night, the rain easing to drizzle, my phone buzzed with a final message from Emily, "I love you. I see you now. Always will, I smiled, tucking the phone away. Because success had never been about revenge. It was about being strong enough to keep loving them even when they were wrong, until they learned to love you back. And in the heart of the storm, they finally had.